Dele. I think there's a lot of other issues that are going on and other players that aren't performing at the same level as last season. We mentioned Eriksen, we mentioned Dyer. We got players returning from injury. Dele doesn't look anywhere near the player he used to look like. He looks every bit his 30, 31 years of age at the moment. Rose is still coming back from fitness. Lamella's only just coming back from fitness. There's a whole series of interrelated things, I think, that are making us inconsistent this season. And Dele Alli's funk, as Chair has put it, is just one of those things at the moment.
Tim, do you look at Dele and think that maybe, not that he's a one-trick pony, but nutmegging a player, making them look a little foolish, giving himself that air of confidence that allows him to go ahead and spring on? It's almost like every player in the Premier League knows he's going to try to meg me, and I'm going to defend that. And he hasn't pulled one off in quite a while. That combined with some dodgy first touches, Eriksen's suffered from that. Rose has suffered from that here recently. Do you think he's a little bit of a one-trick pony, and he needs to start, working on the other things in his locker to be a little bit more effective offensively?
No, because I mean, when you look at last season, it wasn't like a nutmeg was the only facet of his game. His movement just hasn't been there this season. It just comes down to a lack of effort. I don't see him making some of the runs he made last year. And that's simply what I'm seeing. That's it. I mean, he's just not giving the same amount of effort. I don't think he needs to have, certain tricks in his book. It's not, like a defensive end in football, in American football, when you have to have different spin moves. It's not down to the moves. It's just down to him not giving the effort anymore that we saw last season, that we saw the last two seasons when we were chasing the title. It seems like the play recently has been like it was when we checked out and lost the title at Stamford Bridge. That's what it's looked like, just lethargic for the last month and a half.
Yeah, no.
But, I mean, I think I got us down a run on Dele.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about Brighton. I mean, it was a boring match. It's kind of like our play's been over the last month and a half.
I think one of the things I want to address in terms of Brighton and also in terms of City yesterday is that I believe Harry Winks easily had his worst week as a Tottenham player in the first team this past week. Culpable yesterday for arguably at least the first goal. Dembele, I saw, maybe he released Otamendi, but Winks was completely flat-footed. And then on the penalty that they missed, there's no way to, Chairs and I were talking about this yesterday, no way that they should have had a second shot at that. And Winks is simply standing at the D, didn't even move when that ball was kicked. You talk about, maybe Dele needs to sit or something along those lines. Maybe it's Winks that needs to sit, move Dele back, let him play a little bit of a different position with Dyer, hopefully, if Sanchez is coming back, and maybe we can move Dyer back into the midfield, and let him develop that relationship. Let him see the pitch from a different perspective. Interject Lamela or Sissoko back into the starting attacking midfield and move forward that way. Chairs, I know that you had some comments about Winks and how things transpired yesterday and even against Brighton. Your thoughts on him and what might be going through his head a little bit?
Well, I don't want to belabor the point of us having an almost clinical assassination of some of our players. But, he has been off a little bit. And I did take it with a pinch of salt how kind of it seemed like Wembley reacted on Wednesday with that pass that went backwards. And you heard this resounding kind of... and that's not really on. That doesn't help the team whatsoever. But I definitely thought he had a poor game yesterday against 11 guys who had a poor game. But some of his decision making yesterday was kind of highlighted. And again, you're looking at a snapshot of what you're seeing on your TV screen versus the big picture. But you seem to be ball watching on the first goal, even though Dembele was, I think, probably more at fault for not marking.
Yeah.
What's his name? Gungadon. And then you're right on the penalty. He seemed to be just watching it and not reacting to the fact that the defending team has the opportunity to put the players closest to the penalty taker, and if you're not going to take advantage if there is a miss and a rebound, then shame on you. And I saw that, and so observation more than the criticism. But I think he's a promising lad, but
yeah.
He's learning from these things, and I'm sure Poch is having those conversations with him on the team talk on Monday when they come back for training.
Yeah, Vass, the team needs to figure out a way to kick off a little bit faster as well, right? Last week versus Stoke, we have the own goal by Shawcross. It doesn't matter how it goes in, get the lead and be able to open a team up. This week it was Aurier with that, a pass that was basically a carbon copy of what Kane did for his 100th goal versus Everton, where it was a swung-in pass that kind of was a little errant and managed to fly over the head of the keeper, and Aurier got the goal. That kind of kicked us off. We didn't do much with it. Sealed the deal late in the match with in the 87th minute with Sonny's goal. Who's been playing, as we've highlighted, very well here recently. Then you switch over to City. The fullbacks are selected. Trippier played yesterday with Rose. I'm kind of interested in your thoughts on that part of it. That let Rose face Walker. Do you think maybe there was a conversation between Rose and Poch that says, hey, let me go against him? I think in the end that may have hurt us a little bit. Not that I think anybody would have made a difference. City is just a machine right now.
No, I don't think Pochettino bases his team selection on anything that a player will say to him. I think our concerns and our problems yesterday were on the other side, and Trippier, for me, is becoming a bit of a liability. He was no match for Sane at all. Once or twice, Sane got in behind him before they even scored the first goal, and it was a constant threat down that side every time. I don't know which midfielder was tasked with supporting Trippier on that side, but it didn't really work. And whilst Trippier did end last season fairly strongly and did quite well, competed, it seems that hasn't crossed over into this season, and it's a real concern. Because going forward, he doesn't have the capacity to beat a man. He always likes to check inside or cross from deep.
Yeah.
And then defensively, I don't think he has the pace to recover or the defensive nous to get on the right side of his man. So the game seems to be beyond him sometimes, and it's a real concern. Now, obviously, we bought Aurier in the hope that he would be our starting right back, and maybe it's just a question of him acclimatising to the English game, and he needs a bit more time. But I think we have issues there at the full-back spots because we're not as strong in those positions as we were last season. I mean, Davis started the season well. Now that Rose is back, there's competition for places again. And Rose is actually only now finding his feet. I mean, you've got to remember he had a pretty serious injury too. So whilst he's anxious to get back and play as quickly as possible and has been throwing a little bit of a strop as well, he has to understand that he'll play regularly when it's appropriate.
Yeah. So
full-backs is an issue for us, big issue. So I think that was one of the things that were exploited yesterday by Manchester City, and we just didn't recover really.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No. So in terms of Harry Winks, I think, the chap is young. There is no question that he is a baller, as we say. But whereas earlier in the season he practically held the midfield away at Real Madrid on his own, his performances have dipped in recent weeks too. And it's not a criticism of him as an individual to say that he's had a bad game, which I think he has done in the last two matches. He's had games that are below his own high standards. He will be a very big player for us. I just don't think we can rely on him in every game. And playing alongside either Dembele or even Sissoko is not really helping him, because Dembele isn't the player of last year, and Sissoko tends to drift quite a lot. So there are issues around the pitch, but I think it's down to the players now to, if they've got a week to the next game, they've got to put that to good use and see if they can come back fighting and hungry again. Yeah,
I think some of this, Timmy, boils down to a couple of players, maybe 3, maybe even 4 or 5, that are, everybody is going to go through a dip in form, and everybody is going to have moments where, or, even weeks and months where their form is great, and we have a handful of players that are having a dip in form. That combined with the fact that, lest we forget, Toby Alderweireld and Victor Wanyama, who were arguably, aside from Harry Kane, our 2 best players last season, are still out injured. I think a lot of what's going on here recently in the last 6 weeks or so is being highlighted by the fact that those 2 players are missing. I think Alderweireld is absolutely indispensable in the back. Every player is quote-unquote replaceable. I don't know that he is right now. And Wanyama, Conte won Footballer of the Year, and I mentioned to Chairs when we were driving home yesterday, he outplayed Conte in the midfield both matches against Chelsea last year. And Victor Wanyama, very well over the course of that entire season, may have well been our very best player in the way that we talk about controlling the midfield. I know that you're kind of our injury whisperer, and I'm really interested to get your interjections on those 2 players and how vital they actually are to the squad.
I mean, just looking at Wanyama, I think he could have made a huge difference in the game yesterday. Kevin De Bruyne just ran all over the pitch, unimpeded by anybody the entire match. He was amazing the entire match yesterday. We did nothing to stop him. Dembele and Winks didn't do a damn thing. And I think just Wanyama's physical presence, he could have done something there. I mean, we are severely missing him in the midfield. He is someone who can help us control that area of the pitch, and I think the last few games, Stoke aside, we've really lost the battle there. And I mean, with Toby, it's like you said, he is one of the best, if not the best, center backs in England, and you're always going to suffer when a player of that magnitude is out.
Yeah.
Somebody made the point yesterday, sorry to interject, somebody made the point yesterday that Manchester City were also without Silva, Company, and somebody else, I can't remember.
Well, yeah, that's what I wanted to bring.
The difference, though, is that Man City can cope. They've got equally good players to bring in and replace those players. We haven't. And I would argue that any team would miss the impact of a Toby Alderweireld and a Victor Wanyama. Any team in the Premier League would miss those 2 players.
Yeah.
And us probably more than any other, because we're so dependent on them and we don't have as capable people to step in and take their place. So it's not exactly the same.
Let me touch on that, because just looking at their defense, I don't know if they really have equally capable players to step in. I mean, look at the defense they put out there yesterday. Otamendi, Mangala, and Fabian Delph as left back. I mean, that's not equal replacements to the players that were sitting out. That's a very weakened defense, and we couldn't do shit against them. 7 total shots, only 2 on target. I mean, that is not acceptable going up against a defense that is that weakened. We should have done better in the final third, and it's
of course, Tim. I agree with you.
I mean,
I agree with you.
Trips versus Fabian fucking Delph. I mean, seriously.
Trips never got close to Fabian Delph, Tim, because he had to look after Sane all game.
Yeah.
He had to look after Sane all game. He never even got close to Fabian Delph. You're right in as far as maybe they're not quite at the same level, but those defenders are capable, but that we never really tested them because we couldn't get the ball into the final third, and we were making poor decisions in the final third when we did get up there. I mean, aside from the first 5 minutes in the first half yesterday, and maybe the first 10 or 15 of the second half, where it looked like we were trying to get a foothold back in the game and do things, once our spell of pressure came to an end and Manchester City got a foothold in the game, their game plan and their players were better than ours on the day. We were